Hey there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Living Inspired with Autism. I'm Antoinette. I'm a life coach, I'm an autism mom, and someone who's walked this path you're on right now. If you're new here, welcome. Pull up a chair, grab a coffee, or maybe this is your third cup today. Let's have a real conversation. I was thinking about this episode while I was sitting in my car yesterday waiting for Max to finish one of his therapy sessions, and I watched another mom walk by. Her shoulders were slumped, her phone was pressed to her ear, and I heard her saying, "I just don't know if I can keep doing this." And my heart just broke a little because I've been her. I've said those exact words. And if you're listening right now, chances are that maybe you have been here too. So today we are going to be talking about something that took me years to understand. 3 of the most massive misconceptions that so many of us carry about what's actually causing our struggles as autism parents. And these aren't character flaws. They aren't failures. These are beliefs that we are handed by a world that doesn't fully understand neurodivergence yet. But once we see them clearly, once we name them, we understand what's really happening, that's when everything starts to shift. Not overnight. I'm not trying to sell a fairy tale here, but genuinely deeply shift. So today I'm going to share with you 3 of these misconceptions, tell you some stories from my own journey and from families that I've coached, and most importantly, give you a different lens to look through. Because understanding is the first step to freedom. Ready? Let's dive in. And let's start with the big one. The one that we might have even said out loud, and maybe it's whispered in the back of our minds during the hardest moments. And that is the belief that our kiddos' autism is the problem. Now, before you click away thinking I'm about to shame you, just stay with me. This isn't about judgment. This is about truth. Here's what this belief sounds like in our heads. If they could just communicate better, if the meltdowns would stop, if they could just handle the transitions, if they could just be more flexible, then our family could be happy. Then I could breathe. Now, I remembered one morning, Max was about 5, and we were trying to get ready for school. And he had a complete meltdown because I'd given him his breakfast in the blue bowl instead of the green one. The blue bowl, friends. And as I sat there on the kitchen floor, holding my screaming child with cereal everywhere, already 20 minutes late, I thought, why does this have to be so hard? Why can't he just eat from this bowl or any bowl? And in that moment, I believed his autism was the problem, his rigidity, his need for sameness, his inability to go with the flow. But what I learned, and this changed things for me, the problem wasn't Max's need for predictability. The problem was that I was trying to force our morning routine into what a quite normal family morning should look like. The Pinterest perfect morning with everyone dressed and fed and smiling by 7:30. So let me paint you a different picture. What if we designed our mornings around what actually works for our family? What if the green bowl lived permanently at Max's spot? What if we built in extra time for transitions? What if we stopped apologizing for accommodations and started seeing them as acts of love? And when I shifted from how do I make Max fit into the world to how do I create a world where Max can thrive, things changed. And this doesn't mean lowering expectations or giving up on growth, because Max has grown tremendously. But he's grown because we've created an environment where he feels safe enough to stretch, not because we forced him into a box that was never meant for him. So let me share something a mom in my coaching program said last week. Her name is Sarah. And she said, I spent 3 years trying to eliminate my daughter's stimming because I thought it was a problem. But when I finally accepted it, when I bought her fidgets and I created a sensory corner and stopped apologizing to strangers, she actually started stimming less in public because she wasn't anxious about hiding who she was anymore. Your kiddo's autism isn't the problem. The problem is that we're all trying to navigate a neurotypical world with a neurodivergent GPS. Of course, we're getting lost. But when we stop seeing autism as something to overcome and start seeing it as something to understand and work with, when we stop fighting against the current and learn to swim with it, that's when we find our flow. Now let's talk about the misconception that might be a really painful one. The one that keeps us up at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering if our kiddos would be better off with a different parent. The belief that we're not enough for this job. If I could reach through this microphone now and hug you right now, I would. Because this one nearly broke me. I want to tell you about a Tuesday, just a regular Tuesday, about 2 years into our autism journey. And Max had a really rough day at school, and I'd gotten 3 calls from his teacher. I'd left work early again. My boss was losing patience, and I could feel a doctor's visit coming up because I wasn't feeling great. And that night, after Max finally fell asleep after a 2-hour bedtime battle, I sat in my bathroom and Googled autism residential programs. Not because I wanted to send him away, but because I genuinely believed that he would be better off somewhere else, with professionals, with people who were trained for this, with people who were stronger and more patient and better equipped than I was. I felt like such a failure because other autism parents seemed to have it all together. They had visual schedules and sensory bins, and they spoke at conferences about their journey. And meanwhile, I was hiding in my bathroom, crying into a towel so that Max wouldn't hear me. But I've learned since then, and what I now tell every parent I coach is, you are not failing, you're drowning, and there is a difference. Because when you're drowning, it's not because you're a bad swimmer, it's because the water is too deep and the waves are too high, and they will throw you a life vest. Now just think about it. You're managing many of the medical appointments, therapy schedules, IAP meetings, medication trials, insurance battles, sensory needs, dietary restrictions, sleep deprivation, financial stress, marital strains, siblings' needs, your own mental health, self-care. Oh, what is that? And somehow, somewhere in there, you're supposed to find time to shower and maybe remember who you were before all of this. You're not weak. You're Atlas holding up an entire world. And the problem isn't that you're not strong enough. The problem is that you're trying to do a 10-person job alone. The problem is that our society expects autism parents to be superhuman while giving us subhuman support. So I stopped trying to be the perfect autism parent and started being a real one. I hired a babysitter not a special needs therapist or specialist, just a regular nanny who was willing to learn for 2 hours every Saturday. I joined an online support group where I could just be honest about my hard days. I started saying no to things that were burning us out, and I began to matter in my own story again. And you know what? I didn't become a better autism parent by trying harder. I became a better autism parent by recognizing that I am human, by understanding that my needs matter too, by realizing that when I'm empty, I've got nothing to give. There's this myth that autism parents are special people. We are chosen for this, that we have some extra reserve of patience and strength. We don't. We are regular people in extraordinary circumstances. And that's exactly why we need extraordinary support. You are not inadequate. You are under-resourced. You are not impatient. You are just overwhelmed. You are not failing. You are surviving something that would break most people. And the fact that you're still here, still trying, still loving your kiddos fiercely, even on the days when you don't like them very much, that makes you extraordinary. All right, okay, so let's tackle the third misconception that I'm speaking about today. And this one might surprise you, coming from someone who absolutely believes in the value of therapy and intervention. And that's the belief that if we just do more speech, more OT, more ABA, more social skills groups, more, then everything will be okay. I call this like the therapy treadmill, and oh boy, did I run on it hard. At one point, Max's schedule looked like this. On Monday, he had speech after school. On Tuesday, he had OT after school. On Wednesday, he had spell to communicate. On Thursday, he had speech again. Friday, he had behavioral therapy. Saturday, he had therapeutic horseback riding. And Sunday, supposedly a rest day, but really it was just prepping, meal prepping and planning for the next day, for the next week. We were spending about 20 plus hours a week in therapy or traveling to and from therapy. My car actually became our second home. And you know what? Max was miserable. I was exhausted. Our family never just was. We were always going, doing, fixing, improving, and working on something. The truth that I had to face is that I was using therapy as a way to avoid accepting my kiddo as he was. Every therapy session was hope that maybe this would be the thing that fixed him, in quote unquote, or made it easier for him. Maybe this would make him act more normal. Maybe this would make our lives easier. But what Max needed, what we all needed, wasn't more intervention. It was more connection, and love. And I remember the day this hit me, because Max was scratching the OT, and she was trying to talk me into adding an extra session. And Max, my beautiful, exhausted 7-year-old, looked at me and said in his limited verbal way, "I'm done, Mama, I'm done." I cancelled half his therapies that day. Half. And you know what happened? He started making more progress because he wasn't exhausted, because he had time to be a kid, because we had time to be together without an agenda. Now, I'm not saying therapy is bad. Therapy can be life-changing. But there's a point where more isn't better. It's actually harmful. And we have to ask ourselves, is this therapy serving my child or my anxiety? Is my child growing or just complying? Are we building skills or are we just checking boxes? What would happen if we did less, but with more intention? One family I coached recently, they cut their therapy by 60% and replaced that time with family activities that their autistic son actually enjoyed. For example, cooking together, nature walks, building Legos, and 6 months later, his teachers actually commented on how much more regulated and engaged he seemed. Not because of what they added, but because of what they subtracted. Your child doesn't need to be in therapy 40 hours a week to have a good life. They need to be loved and accepted and given space to grow at their own pace. They need to see that they're perfect as they are, even while they're learning and developing. Sometimes the bravest thing that we can do is to step off the therapy treadmill and ask, what does a good life look like for our family? Not a typical life, not a normal life, a good life, and a sustainable life, a life with joy in it. Okay, so we've identified these 3 big misconceptions. Now what? How do we actually start shifting these beliefs in our daily lives? So let me give you some practical starting points. For misconception number 1, where we believe autism is the problem, I want you this week to pick one daily challenge and ask yourself, how can I adapt the environment instead of trying to change my child? Maybe it's putting their favorite bowl in the same spot every day. Maybe it's creating a visual schedule. Maybe it's changing your route to school to avoid sensory triggers, or one small environmental change. For misconception number 2, where your belief is I'm not enough, I want you to do 2 things. First, write down everything that you do in a single day for your family. Everything. I bet you it's going to be pages long. Look at that list and recognize the superhuman feat you're performing daily. Second, identify one thing, just one, that you can delegate, drop, or delay this week. Just give yourself permission to be human. For misconception number 3, where your belief is more therapy will fix it, take an honest inventory of your kiddo's therapy schedule. For each therapy, ask, is my kiddo enjoying this? Are we seeing meaningful progress? Is this sustainable for our family? And could this need be met in a different, less intensive way? Consider quality over quantity. And here's a bonus practice for all 3. Start a joy journal, not a gratitude journal, because we've all tried those, but a joy journal. Write down one moment each day when you saw your kiddo being genuinely happy, not just achieving something, not just meeting a goal, just joyful. It might be while they're stimming. It might be during their special interest time. It might be in the bathtub. Start noticing their joy, because that's your compass for what's working. Okay, friends, as we wrap up today, I want you to hear this. You're not doing it wrong. You're not behind, and you're not failing your child. You're a parent trying to navigate a world that wasn't built for family, with a map that doesn't match your terrain, and you're doing it with more love and determination than most people could even imagine. These misconceptions that we've spoken about today, they're not character flaws. They're survival mechanisms the how we've tried to make sense of something that often just doesn't make sense. But now that we can see them clearly, we can start to loosen their grip on us. Change doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small moments of choosing differently, of choosing connection over correction, of choosing self-compassion over self-criticism, of choosing what works for your family over what looks good to others. You don't have to do this alone. Whether it's through coaching or community or just continuing to show up here each week, you deserve support, real support, not just strategies and checklists. So if today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me a DM on Instagram at Living Inspired with Autism and tell me which misconception hit home for you. Tell me what you're going to try differently this week. And if you're ready to go deeper, if you're ready to not just survive this journey, but to actually find joy in it again, I do have a few spots open in my coaching program. So the link for a free discovery call where we can talk about it is in the show notes. No pressure, just possibility. Until next time, remember, your child's autism is not a problem to solve. You are not inadequate, you are just under-supported. And more therapy isn't always the answer. Sometimes less is more. Take care of yourself this week. Not just your kiddo, not just your family, yourself. You matter in the story too. Keep going, warrior. You're doing better than you know.